Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning here again on Gun Deals. This is Son of Liberty. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look and diving into Taurus's G3 9mm compact pistol. I've got to tell you that when I first saw this, I really love the aesthetics of it, the way that the two-tone flat dark earth popped. Not only that, but the price point was really appealing for me for those hardworking Americans, the blue-collared Americans that really are stretching that dollar, but they should not be denied the ability to be able to find a firearm in today's society that is reliable. And so that's what we're here to do. I'm here to put this one through its paces and see if it holds up to our expectations. So stay tuned, guys. You don't want to miss this. Now, traditionally speaking, when I'm doing a breakdown of a pistol, I will typically start at the top and work my way down. That just helps me to stay on track. However, today I'm going to be doing things a little bit different, and I'm actually going to start at the frame and kind of work my way up. As I do so, I'll actually be talking about the pros and the cons, and then we'll come back for a quick recap with my final thoughts. So as far as the frame goes, I think that Taurus done a really great job. One of the things that I really like is the actual grip angle of the frame. It's not overly large or elongated with a hump like you will typically find on Glocks. So this is going to fit a variety of different shooters based on, just a multitude of different hand sizes. They've done a really great job with the texturing all the way around. It's not aggressive, it's not aggressive enough, it's just in that sweet spot right there in the middle. Now, I shot 500 rounds through the gun, and during that time frame, I didn't develop any kind of hot spots or any kind of areas that was uncomfortable based on my hand size, and I have large size hands. Now, one of the areas that I think is really overlooked among gun manufacturers is how the trigger guard itself is shaped. Now, if we take a look at a lot of German manufacturers, they will typically design their trigger guards very large, with a 90-degree angle. The material itself around the trigger guard is a lot thicker, and this just really makes it more difficult for the support hand to get higher on the gun, especially if you have small hands. Now, what Taurus done, which I think is really great, is they actually tapered this trigger guard up, okay? So not only are you able to get your primary shooting hand high on the actual gun itself, high up underneath the trigger guard, but because it's tapered upward, your support hand is able to get higher on the gun, and this is going to lend in better mitigation of recoil. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of male shooters out there, but the reality is by developing or by going with this tapered design, it's going to lend to more comfort of the support hand. It's going to allow the support hand to ride higher on the actual frame itself, which is going to lend to better recoil mitigation for a variety of different shooters based on their age, their hand size, as well as their overall strength. Now, in the middle of the frame, there are what I like to call index points. They are just slightly concaved areas on the frame that just allow you the ability to apply a little downward pressure if you need that additional pressure to control recoil. It's also just kind of like a good indicator, especially for those newer shooters, to develop really great habits that when they're at the range in front of their target, that their finger stays at those access or those index points when their finger is off the trigger. Again, it's just a good practice. So I like the fact that they went with that. However, I do wish that they would have applied some of the texture that they put on the actual frame of the gun up here at the top or in these actual index points. And the reason being is just it's going to allow better control, especially for those people who may not have a lot of hand strength. Now, Taurus done a really great job with their Picatinny rail. It's got a lot of real estate. You've got 3 different slots, so it will accommodate a different or a variety of different lights, lasers, training tools such as like the Mantis X10 Elite, those types of things. But I like to run lights, so this is going to accommodate a variety of different preferences, whether you like smaller lights like the TLR7 Alpha, or if you prefer the larger lights like the Surefire X300 or the TLR HL series. Now, in regards to the magazine release itself, I wasn't happy with it. I do feel that it could have been designed a little bit differently. Now, everything up until this point seems to really lend to a variety of different shooters as well as hand sizes. But when we get to this magazine release, it's just really underdone. It's very small, so it seems like it was really focused on, shooters with small hands. When you have large size hands, you feel like you're kind of maybe even almost searching for it just a little bit. And I would have just liked to have a wider magazine release so that I could make sure that I'm just getting that firm interaction with that magazine release, okay? Now, as far as its functionality, I didn't have any issues. The magazines shoot out as they're intended. I don't feel any drag on the inside of the frame. I don't feel drag when I'm actually depressing or pressing the magazine release. Again, everything, function as it's intended. I just wish that they would have went with the larger size. Now, they didn't have to increase the height of the magazine release because I felt like that this was done correctly as regards of height. But there's plenty enough real estate that they could have increased the width just to have a better interaction with a variety of different hand size of shooters. Now, in regards to safeties, this particular model had one. I believe they come with an option to purchase the gun without a safety, but don't hold me to that. So if I end up purchasing a gun that does have a safety, there are a few things that I look for in regards to its functionality. Is it really stiff? Is it going to be, easy to engage or disengage based on a variety of different strengths as well as hand sizes, okay? Because placement of a safety is important. Another thing that I look for is it natural to engage or disengage based on having to draw the firearm in a self-defense situation, okay? So what I'm looking for is it easily manipulated with one hand, okay? If it is not, obviously that can become a problem. You may be in a situation where you may not be able to use both hands, okay? If the magazine, or excuse me, the safety is very stiff, elderly people may have an issue with that and have to use two hands. This one, they've done a really nice job on it. It's very intuitive, it's very easy to manipulate whether you're activating it or deactivating it, and it's very natural. So if I'm drawing this from strong side, it's very natural for me just to drop my thumb down as I am presenting the gun out, and engaging a target or whatever the case may be. Disengaging it, just as easy to do it with my thumb, and it's because of how it's designed. It's got a nice ramp, and so you've got enough leverage below as well as on above, again, to disengage it or engage it. Now, just forward of that, we have the slide stop or the slide release, whichever you prefer terminology-wise. I like the terminology of slide release. So typically what I do when I'm reloading is I will place my thumb directly on top of the slide release as I insert the magazine and apply upward pressure to the bottom of the magazine. I drop my thumb down at the same time, allowing the slide to go forward, and it just gives me the ability to be able to get the gun up and running quicker, all right? Now, obviously not everybody may prefer that method. They may prefer the slingshot method, but however that you prefer that, because the safety on this particular one sets up higher than the actual slide stop, it does create a little bit of a maybe not so much as an issue, but it kind of forces me, I kind of had to adjust my thumb ever so slightly in order to get around the safety itself in order to engage that slide release because of its location and how high it sits away from the frame in relation to the safety itself. Obviously, in this particular circumstance, the safety has to take priority. So, obviously that's not a negative against the gun. It's just something that I felt like I should mention. Now, we'll come back to the trigger in just a moment. I want to show you some range footage in regards to that, but let's go ahead and move up and talk about the slide. On the back of the slide, we actually have some decent serrations. They're cut, somewhat nicely into the slide itself. That's going to provide additional bite, when you're charging the gun, but there's enough real estate right here. There's enough serrations to accommodate a variety of different hand sizes. And so this is going to really, accommodate a variety of different methods as well, whether you prefer the index and the thumb method to charge the gun or the overhanded method, okay? So they've done a very nice job here on these rear serrations. Now, moving on up to the front serrations, there is a lot to be desired here. Now, I am of the opinion that if you're going to add serrations to a gun, they need to be applied appropriately, okay? Or placed appropriately, if you will. The serrations, if we take a look here, will force my hand to be as close to the barrel as possible, all right? There is plenty of real estate on both sides of this gun in order to be able to drop these serrations back, you know, at least 1/4 of an inch to allow better safety for the end user and just better overall you know, placement of the serrations, okay? Sometimes, depending on the malfunction, I will roll the gun back ever so slightly to verify what kind of malfunction that it is. If it's something that I feel I might have to strip the magazine out itself, like a double feed, typically what I will do, I will tap it. If that doesn't clear it, I will simply roll the gun in my hand, bring that back to a slide lock, rip the magazine out, insert a new magazine, and now I'm back on target. I want to be able to get the gun up running as quickly as possible. Sometimes I will simply do it just to charge the gun, again, depending on the type of malfunction that I have. So again, I felt like that these could have been placed much better, not only from a safety point, but from a functionality point as well. Now, when the salesman actually handed this to me out of the case, I immediately thought that the sights were plastic, okay? Number one, because of its price point, but secondly, when I saw the front sight, the way that it is actually made, they look identical to a factory standard sight that comes on a Glock. So immediately I thought that they were plastic. It wasn't until a little bit later when I looked at them that I realized that they're actually steel. So that was actually a nice upgrade based on the price and the fact that they're steel and not plastic. So if we take a look at the rear sight here, it's actually got serrations. If you're new to firearms, the reason that they do that is to cut down on glare, bright lights, or in a sunny environment. It's just to reduce the amount of glare that you may experience on the rear sight. The front of the sight, though, I did have some issues, not a deal breaker. During testing on day 2 at the range, the front sight came loose and started to spin on me. I did have a tool to tighten it down, but I did not have any Loctite. I tightened it down enough, which I thought was going to hold it, but once I got to the range during testing of day 3, the front sight came loose again. So the last time I did have some Loctite, I applied that to that. And obviously I've not had any issues with that. I do feel like that is a quality control issue. That is something that they could, you know, reasonably accommodate when the individuals are installing the front sights. Just add a little bit of Loctite, and that's just going to ensure that end users don't have, you know, those types of issues, okay? Again, quality control issue there, but not a deal breaker. The sights are low profile, so they are going to provide less of a snag hazard coming out of a leather holster, you know, coming out of clothing, whatever the case may be. So again, that is a nice touch. And because they are low to the actual gun itself, you're not going to have a large point of aim, point of impact shift, obviously depending on your yardage, but initially within that 15 yard to 25 yard you know, range distance, okay? So overall, the sights for what, you know, for the gun and the overall price, I think that they're a good option. Now, in regards to the barrel, there are a few things that I need to actually cover. But first up, let's go ahead and talk about the coating. There's a few reasons companies will add like a bluing or nitride finish to a barrel. Not only does it look aesthetically pleasing to a lot of people and just kind of gives the gun an overall better look, but it does increase the overall longevity, you know, against wear of the barrel. With everything, there is a cost associated with that, which is going to drive up manufacturing cost, which the manufacturer would then have to pass on to you, the end user. Taurus decided to go with a standard finish on this barrel to keep costs low and to be able to meet a particular price threshold. Now, I did have some issues with the barrel on day 1 testing. So once I got to the range and I got loaded up, I started having some failure to feed issues immediately, as you guys can see here from the footage. Initially, you know, I had to go through my own diagnosis. You know, was the gun being particular on its ammo selection, or was it something that the gun needed to be broken in? Obviously, that was a factor that I was considering. Later, I was able to determine that it was a magazine issue, which was causing my failure to feed. But we'll talk about that here in just a second when we tune into the range. After the first magazine, I started to notice that there was something kind of odd going on with the target, but I proceeded to load up another magazine and shoot the second mag. As you guys can see here, in all the years that I've been shooting, I've never seen anything quite like this. but I had spalling, massive amounts of spalling all the way around my shot group. So I loaded everything up. I took some footage of it, you know, with my phone so I could send that to Taurus, and I contacted them. You know, obviously they're like, send us the gun and everything. I did. About 2 weeks later, I got the gun back, or 2.5 weeks later, I got the gun back with a new barrel. I took it back to the range, and that in fact did fix the issue. However, I was still having some failure to feed issues from one of my magazines. So anyway, let's tune into the range and I'll give you guys a closer look at that, as well as the trigger. All right, guys, so one of the issues that I'm having is a failure to feed issue. Now, obviously, because I've got a brand new barrel in this thing, I know that that is not the issue, because I've already tested it. What is happening in this standard capacity magazine, which this one holds 15, is that as I load the magazine to its full capacity, I can feel the bottom part of the magazine as I shake it. I can feel all those rounds inside there loose, okay? In my opinion, the magazine follower is getting stuck at the bottom part of the magazine, and it's not breaking free into the upper part of the mag, and that's the reason why I'm only having issues in the bottom part, and it seems consistent every single time. I usually have about 3 failure to feed issues, okay? And so what I've done is I've downloaded this to 6 rounds, and hopefully that will correct the issue just for the remaining part of this video. All right, guys, so I want to take just a moment here and show you what the trigger looks like. Its take up, its break, its reset, those types of things. There's some things about the trigger I like. There's some things that I don't like about the trigger. So if we take a look at the trigger, we have a very long take up, okay? So our take up goes to there. All right, so a very long travel. I am not used to that, so it's taken me some getting used to. But once I hit this wall, it is a very pronounced wall. It's not a hard break, it's not a soft break, it's just somewhere right in between. And on this particular pistol, for this particular trigger, it actually feels really good. So again, here is your take up and then the break. Let's take a look at that one more time. Take up and to the wall, break. Now, here's the issue that I find with it. It does have a nice soft reset, somewhat audible. The problem with this particular trigger for me is that there's no forward pressure. All right, so if you're a new shooter, as you become more advanced in shooting and you start to really dial in your reset to minimize the movement of the actual gun, to set yourself up for success in breaking that second shot, different triggers are going to feel differently, and how much force that they apply against your finger to get you to that second, or get you to the reset so that you can break that second shot. Again, this particular one, I believe it does need some work, especially on the take up. That take up is just ridiculously too long. But for, you know, something that is specifically for CCW, in my personal opinion, it's just a little bit too long. All right, guys, so that is going to be a wrap on today's video review of Taurus's G3 9mm pistol. Obviously, I wish that I'd had a little bit more success with this pistol. I'd heard nothing but great things about it. Obviously, that is one of the reasons I wanted to test it here on the channel, because I'm constantly looking for those $400 or sub $400 guns for those hardworking, blue-collared Americans, you know, who may not have the money to be able to buy the higher-end guns. Obviously, there are a multitude of different guns that are very reliable, that fall into that financial category, and I want to be able to give those families more buying power. With that being said, I did have plans to do the review of Taurus's G4, but unless Taurus is specifically willing to actually send me one, I think I will take the money from the channel and actually spend it towards another firearm to actually test, just because I feel like the money will be more well spent. I also want to give a special thank you to my good friend who actually owns Range 51, which is where I'm located at here today in Mountain City, Tennessee. A beautiful facility. As you can see, there is all kinds of stuff here for me to do, and I will be coming back here for future reviews on the channel, so this won't be the last time that you'll see me here at this range. So again, special thank you to my good friend. And as always, I want to thank you so much for your continued support here on the channel. Until that next video, guys, take care, be safe.